Hello everyone, it's me, Mr. Macaluso, and today is your penultimate lecture in Ancient Studies. We're going to have a lecture today and one later in the week. Penultimate means second to last. Today's lecture is on the rise of Islam. Now, let's think about this. We've studied a lot of religions this year. We started off talking about Judaism. We spent some time on that, and then later on we got to some of the religions that came out of India. So we talked about Brahmanism, Hinduism, Buddhism. Okay. Later on, we talked about Christianity. Just pretty recently, actually, we talked about Christianity. Unfortunately, we didn't have as much time as we would have liked to spend on Christianity, and that is unfortunately true with Islam as well. We would definitely like to spend more time, but because of the circumstances, these two lectures are all we're really going to get. However, we think that the understanding just the basic origins of these very important world faiths will serve you in good stead. So here we are, the rise of Islam. First thing I want you to know is that Islam is founded on the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century CE. So we're talking about the 600s. And here, if you look at the globe that I have on the screen, you can see the Arabian Peninsula, which today is made up of the countries of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, among some others. So the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century was populated mainly by some warring, polytheistic, nomadic tribes. So what do I mean by that? Nomadic, we all know what that means. These are generally what we refer to as the Bedouin. They were people who traveled the Arabian Peninsula, and they were essentially pastoralists, shepherding livestock. Okay, they were polytheistic or pagan. That is, they worshipped many gods, and these tribes were constantly at war with each other. Okay, so we can also refer to the Arabian Peninsula as tribal, meaning it's split up into tribes, and those tribes are constantly fighting each other. Okay, and so that you can imagine that those facts alone really determine a lot about how the people in the Arabian Peninsula live. There's cities on the Arabian Peninsula. Not everyone is nomad, but the most important city is the city of Mecca. I'm sure you've all heard of it, and it's important mainly because it's a religious city, and it's a religious city because there is a shrine there called the Kaaba. Okay, now, the Kaaba, pay attention to this, make sure you write it down. The Kaaba is a shrine in which all of the different tribes on the Arabian Peninsula keep their idols. Okay, so remember, these are pagans, and they worship many different gods, and usually those gods are have a physical manifestation, which is some sort of, wooden or stone idol. Now, if you're a nomadic tribe, it's difficult to carry these idols around all the time. Think about the Jews as they came on their exodus through the desert. They carried with them the Ark of the Covenant, but what did they do when they finally got to the Promised Land? They built a huge and beautiful temple for it. So, in like fashion, these nomadic tribes have built, well, I won't say that they built the Kaaba, but they used the Kaaba to house their idols. Okay, now tradition says that the Kaaba was actually erected by Abraham for his son Ishmael and his mother Hagar, who, if you remember, was the woman that Abraham had his first child with. More on that a little bit later. Okay, so because all of the tribes keep their idols in Mecca at the Kaaba, Mecca is the one place on the peninsula where the tribes never fight each other. They have a constant peace treaty there. So think about that. That's really interesting, right? If this is the one place on the Arabian Peninsula where there is no warfare, what else might flourish in the city of Mecca? Some of you probably are going to guess this on your own. Trade, of course. It becomes a commercial center. Right? It's the one place where we can all act in peace, where we don't fight each other, so we'll also do some trading there, okay? Now, here on the map, you see the city of Mecca, and I want to talk about Mecca's most important inhabitant, who is Muhammad. Okay, so the prophet of Islam, his name is Muhammad, but his origins and his start in life are very, very humble. Okay, he's born in 570 CE in Mecca, and he is born into the most powerful tribe in Arabia. The name of that tribe, write this down, is the Quraysh. Now, I'm always unsure of my pronunciation of certain words, so if I mispronounce it, I'm very sorry. But the Quraysh is the tribe that is in control of Mecca. Now, it stands to reason. If Mecca is the place where all the idols on the Arabian Peninsula are housed, and if it's the place that is the only peaceful place in all of Arabia, and if because of that peacefulness it is also the trading center of Arabia, it stands to reason that the Quraysh, which is in control of Mecca, is also the most powerful tribe in all of Arabia. Okay, so Muhammad is born into this tribe. Okay, so I said that Muhammad is born into humble circumstances. His tribe isn't humble, but here's the deal. Muhammad is born and he's orphaned by the age of 6. Okay, actually his father died before Muhammad was born. That is a huge handicap, especially in a very patriarchal and a very tribal society. To be born without a father means that you have no protection. This is a violent world, and if you have no protection, probably nothing good is going to come of your life, right? Furthermore, at the age of 6, his mother dies. You can imagine how traumatic that would be. Fortunately for Muhammad, he is taken in by his uncle, Abu Talib, who gives him protection and raises him. Okay? And Muhammad actually grows up to become a respected, reputable businessman. Okay? He has a reputation for honesty and for ability. Okay? Now, he's not a extraordinarily rich businessman. He's just a successful businessman. So, again, he's worked his way up. He's not, as lowly as you might imagine an orphan could be, but he's still not. He's not. There's nothing really super unique about him at this point. Tradition tells us that he is illiterate, that he has not had much schooling at all. Okay, but in 610, he's fairly old, and when this happens, during the month of Ramadan. You've all heard of that term before, Ramadan. It's the name of a month in the Arabic or Islamic calendar. In the year 610, Muhammad has a vision. Okay? Now, of course, we've seen people have visions before in this class, and that's not always clear what it actually means to have a vision. Did the thing actually happen? Was it something that just happened in your head? We can never really know. I don't even know, if you have a vision, you might not even be sure yourself. Anyway, Muhammad is called by the angel Gabriel. Now, that name is important. Any of you who know anything about the New Testament, the Christian scripture, know that the angel Gabriel plays an important role there, right? So the angel Gabriel comes to Muhammad and calls on Muhammad to be the messenger or the prophet of the one true God, and that God's name is Allah. Okay? So, Muhammad is living in a polytheistic society, and he is being called to become a monotheist. Does this sound familiar? Have we seen a story similar to this before? Of course we have, right? Abraham was living in a polytheistic society. Remember, Abraham's father was an idol maker, and Abraham gets called to worship one God. Okay? And really in the Islamic tradition, it's the same God. Okay? Abraham is a prophet of this God, but Muhammad is the final prophet. Okay? So Muhammad is called, it's called the Night of Qadr, and he is called to become a monotheist. He's also told that he must spread the message to Arabia and beyond. Okay, so of course he is going to abandon idols and false gods, and he's going to worship Allah only. He has to go and tell everyone in Arabia that that is what they must do. Now remember what I said, Arabia is a very warlike place. What do you think is going to happen to this one individual who says, hey, those gods that you worship are false gods? That is going to be a pretty tricky thing. Okay. Other parts of his teachings are this: we must trade honestly, we must treat women with respect, we must care for orphans. That's interesting, given that he was an orphan. And we must stop the practice of infanticide, that is, the killing of children who are, for one reason or another, unwanted. Okay, and then the last of the major teachings is that there should be no usury. Usury is loaning money out at interest. Okay, so if you look at these basic teachings, you can see that they're really mainly about how we structure our society. Okay, which is interesting. So Muhammad is at first just a single believer, okay? But by 620, something important happens to him. Prior to 620, his tribe, the Quraysh, and I noticed that I spelled it incorrectly there, I'm sorry, it's R-A-I-S-H. The Quraysh is unhappy with Muhammad's teachings, but they're not really concerned. Think about this. He's one man. He seems a little loony to the Quraysh, but they don't see any real reason to fear him. Okay? In 3 years, Muhammad has only attracted 30 converts. Okay, so not something to really worry about. You know, today there are, I think, 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. 1.8 or 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. So, you know, he starts off first 3 years, 30 converts, 10 a year maybe. Not a very inspiring start, I guess. But in 615, the Quraysh they've had it with him, and they basically put him out of business. They say, you know, you're a bad example, and so we are not going to let you conduct business, and we are going to put you under house arrest. So his uncle takes him in and protects him, but Muhammad is basically kind of dead in the water, you could say. However, in 620, another major event in Muhammad's life happens. This is called the night journey. Okay, and here's what happens. One night in 620, Muhammad, who's under house arrest in Mecca, he is transported to Jerusalem. Okay, now when I say he's transported to Jerusalem, I don't mean that someone came by on a camel and took him to Jerusalem. If you look at the map, you can see that Mecca and Jerusalem are pretty far apart. Here's Mecca. Jerusalem is way up here. Okay, so this is a mystical experience, right? He is just kind of somehow, I don't understand how, finds himself in Jerusalem. Okay, and from Jerusalem he ascends into heaven. Okay, so not only does he kind of just get magically transported to Jerusalem, but he also goes up to heaven. Now let's think about the meaning of this. Jerusalem is an important city. It's important to two different faiths that we've already studied, right? It's important to Judaism because Jerusalem becomes the capital of Israel. Okay, it's the place where the temple that held the ark was created. Okay, that temple has been destroyed by the Romans by this point, but still, it's an important city. The tomb of Abraham is there. Abraham is the patriarch of the Jewish people. But Muslims are going to claim Abraham as their patriarch as well. Okay, it's also an important city to Christianity. Jesus is crucified in Jerusalem. And what does he do? He dies and he comes back to life in Jerusalem. Okay, so this is a really important city for what kind of religions? Well, all three of those religions are monotheistic. Now remember, we studied other religions this year. We studied Brahmanism and Hinduism, which are not monotheistic, right? These are the three major monotheistic religions. Okay, so he is transported to Jerusalem. He ascends to heaven. And as you can imagine, after having a trip to heaven, things start really taking off for Muhammad. Okay? From here on out, from this point forward anyway, his followers will face Jerusalem when they pray. That will change over time. But soon thereafter, in 622, another important event. It's called the Hijra. Okay? Hijra is an Arabic word that means exodus or migration. Okay? So in 622, the city of Yathrib is about, I think it's about almost 300 miles, 250 or 300 miles from Mecca. And the city of Yathrib is beset by warfare. Remember, Arabia is a tribal land. Yathrib actually has 5 main tribes. 2 of them are Arab, 3 of them are Jewish, and each one of these tribes are fighting each other to seek dominance, right? So it's not the Arab tribes against the Jewish tribes, it's all 5 tribes against each other. You can imagine how chaotic that would be. So the people of Yathrib realize that the chaos is not getting them anywhere. No tribe is powerful enough to actually win and bring about some sort of stability, right? You can all imagine that. And they decide that they need a mediator, someone who could come in and kind of straighten things out for them. Okay? Now, they turn to Muhammad. They've heard about him, and they invite Muhammad to come and become the mediator in Yathrib. He can bring his followers. They choose Muhammad because he's both an Arab and a monotheist, right? So the fact that he's an Arab makes the Arab tribes trust him. The fact that he believes in only one God, that he believes that Abraham is the patriarch, makes the Jewish tribes trust him. Okay, see how that works? That's kind of interesting. He goes to Yathrib, but only on one condition. He says, I will come and become your mediator, but you must abandon your idols and follow my teachings, that is Muhammad's teachings. Okay, so, I don't know the details here. I'm sure that those Arab tribes were skeptical of this, but Muhammad does come and he mediates, and it works. It brings order to this chaotic city. The city of Yathrib is renamed Medina al-Rasul, which means the city of the messenger. Today we just know it as Medina. Okay, and Muhammad establishes himself as a wise ruler, not only a spiritual ruler, or not only someone who is going to lead them religiously, but also as a temporal leader. Now, you might not know what that means. A temporal leader is this. Those are the kind of leaders that we think of as just comprising our regular government, right? Temporal leaders are not religious leaders. They just kind of do, they're like governors or mayors or the president. So this is a unique feature of Islam, that the leader in Islam is both a religious leader and a temporal leader. Okay, and so Muhammad starts that in the city of Yathrib. Okay, so he's clearly, after the night journey, he is clearly making progress. Now, here's where we start to see a falling out between these early Muslims and Jews. The Jewish tribes of Yathrib, they ultimately reject his leadership. And I think a lot of it has to do with this. So, and this is, I think, kind of a mystery about this story and about Islam. As I mentioned earlier, Muhammad was said to be illiterate. Yet, he seems to know something about the Jewish Torah. The problem is, the Jews think that he gets a lot of critical details wrong about the Torah. And they kind of ridicule him for that and reject him as a spiritual leader. They feel like he just doesn't really know his scripture very well. Okay? Now, what's interesting to me is this. He couldn't read, yet somehow he knew the main stories of the Jewish text. Maybe he just heard that from, maybe he just picked it up from everyday talk. I'm not really sure. But it's interesting. And I think my guess is that for a Muslim, it means that these are really just inspired teachings, right? That he didn't read them in a book. These teachings have been given to him by Allah during his trip to heaven. Okay? Anyway, so the Jewish tribes reject him. Because of that, Muhammad decides to make Islam a more Arabic, or give Islam a more Arabic identity. Instead of facing Jerusalem, his followers are going to start facing Mecca eventually when they pray. And that kind of shows us that, the holy city, although Jerusalem is a holy city, Mecca is going to be more important in the long run. Moving on to 624, we have an important battle. Let's just stop here and think. Muhammad has found himself and established a base. The city of Medina is now his base, right? So he knows he can be safe there in Medina, and he can now start projecting power outwards. In 624, Muhammad was not part of this group, but a group of Muslims, only 300 of them, attack a caravan from Mecca, which has over 1,000 people in it. Okay? So the important thing here is this. The Muslims are clearly the underdog, yet they prevail. And the belief is this. Again, a very warlike peninsula we're on. If 300 can overcome 1,000, it must have something to do with the God that those 300 worship. Okay? Now, I don't think we see history as working this way. I don't. But if you're a religious people, if you have an idol and you believe that praying to that idol will get you what you want, and you pray to that idol and you lose a battle, you might start considering that the God that the other people who defeated you are praying to might be a more powerful God. So this battle of Badr wins more converts to Islam. 4 years later, in 628, Muhammad is now powerful enough that he's able to sign a treaty with the Quraysh. And this treaty is going to allow his followers to go back to Mecca the next year, in 629, to pray at the Kaaba. Now again, I want you to take note of this, write this down. Would the Quraysh make a treaty with someone that they didn't think was powerful? Of course not, right? If someone is weak and you're a powerful tribe, there's no need for you to make a treaty with them. But the fact that they do make a treaty with Muhammad and his followers shows that the Quraysh is starting to see that maybe Muhammad is fairly powerful. Okay, so in 629, some Muhammad and some followers go to Mecca, and they actually go to the Kaaba to worship. Of course, what's wrong with the Kaaba in their eyes? The Kaaba houses idols. They don't like that. Okay, and they want to change that. Remember, Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, originally said to Muhammad to get rid of idols and to spread that idea, and Muhammad wants to do that. So he's got a treaty with Quraysh. He goes and prays at the Kaaba in 629, but in 630, war breaks out. A Muslim, a follower of Muhammad, is killed by a member of the Quraysh. Now, this wasn't a religious killing, we don't think. This was just, I don't know why people kill each other, but someone murdered someone else. But Muhammad seems to have used this as a reason, a casus belli, if you will, to invade Mecca and to finally take Mecca over and take control of the Kaaba and destroy those idols. At this point, he's able to raise an army of 10,000. Imagine that, right? He originally had 30 followers. Now he has 10,000. And he invades Mecca. The leader of the Quraysh, the leader of the tribe, instead of fighting, he decides to convert to Islam. That's a huge victory right there. This army of 10,000 enters Mecca. It's not a bloodbath. Instead, Muhammad allows his former enemies to convert to Islam. He doesn't force them, but he allows them to. And he and his followers destroy all of the idols in the Kaaba. So you could say, just like Abraham, Muhammad is destroying idols, right? He's an iconoclast, is another way of saying that. So that's in 630, and by this time, Muhammad now has control of Mecca, which basically means that Islam is firmly rooted in Arabia. Nothing succeeds like success. And because this army of Muslims who worship Allah, one God, has been so successful, what do you think the other tribes of the peninsula are going to decide to do? They're going to decide that their idols are not powerful, but that Allah is the one true God. And so they start converting to Islam. Okay, so that is just the basic kind of, origin story of Islam. It's an exciting one. It's an important one. But now let's just spend some time talking about the 5 pillars of the Islamic faith. Okay, so the first pillar of the Islamic faith is called Shahada. Again, my apologies if my pronunciation is not stellar. Shahada is otherwise known as the profession of faith, and you've probably heard it said by your Muslim friends that this is it. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. Okay, so that is the essential belief of Islam right there. The next pillar is called Salat, which means prayer. And you probably know this as well. Muslims pray 5 times a day, and when they pray, they always face Mecca. Or if they're in Mecca, they face the Kaaba. Okay, so 5 times a day, every day, a Muslim gets up and prays, usually kneeling down, oftentimes on a small prayer rug. You can pray by yourself, or you can pray with others in your community, but you must pray 5 times a day. The next pillar is called Zakat, and that means alms, and alms means charity. So Muslims must donate a fixed portion of their income every year to charity. Okay, this is not the only faith that has such a stricture. In Christianity, you're supposed to give a 10th of your income to charity every year. I'm sure other religions have similar ideas. The next is Psalm, and again, if you have Muslim friends here in school, obviously, if you are a Muslim, you absolutely know that during the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast. That means from sun up to sundown, they must abstain from food and drink. Okay, and that's during the month of Ramadan. Okay, and that is an important part of the religion. And in other religions too, the notion of fasting is important. It's, I guess, a way of kind of purifying the physical self. And then last is what we call the Hajj, and that means pilgrimage. So it is incumbent on every Muslim who is capable, and by capable I mean physically able, financially able, to visit Mecca and the Kaaba at least once in their life. Okay, so going to Mecca as a spiritual pilgrimage is really important. When you're juniors, if you stay at Glenelg, you will most likely read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And towards the end of that autobiography, Malcolm X goes on a Hajj to Mecca. And it actually, I love that portion of the autobiography because it really fundamentally changes Malcolm X. He understands something that he didn't understand before he went there. And what he really understands is this, that all Muslims are united in their faith. Okay, this is an important concept about Islam, that for Islam, it's not about your tribe or your country, it's about your faith. Okay, so that's what unites you. And the last thing I want to say is this: the Quran is the holy scripture of Islam. Okay, and it is Allah's words which were revealed in Arabic to Muhammad. So again, this is a man who is said to be illiterate, yet he gives us the holy book of the Quran. Okay, the picture on the slide is, I believe and hope that this is some verse in the Quran written in Arabic. Think back to when we studied Judaism. Where did the Torah come from? Well, the Torah was given to Moses by God. Okay, so we have a similar idea here. Also, it should be understood that Muslims believe that the Jewish Torah and the Christian Gospels are also divinely inspired, but the Quran is the final say. Okay, so just like, in Christianity, and again, we probably didn't have enough time to really talk about this, Jesus was Jewish, but he comes and kind of gives a new interpretation of Mosaic law. Now, 600, 700 years later, Muhammad is coming with kind of another maybe interpretation. I'm not really sure how you would characterize it, but basically, if you're Muslim, you believe in these other books, the validity of these other books, but the Quran supersedes them. So that is my lecture on the Quran. I'm certainly not an expert in Islam, but I hope that I gave you a decent understanding of the origins of this very important religion. And in our next lecture, I hope to explain to you a little bit how Islam spread and became a very dominant force in world history. Thank you.